Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. Up early again today, but it's daylight. As it got light, it was very, very foggy and quite cold. But the sun's out and it looks like it'll be a sunny day at the moment, but in this country things can change. I just thought I'd do a walk around. This is normal for every sort of day, and it's a look and see. And I always start in here, obviously. I'm in the house at the moment. These are the indoor plants. And in the not too distant future, this lot have got to go out in the grow room somewhere, goodness knows where. I really am going to have a bit of a clear out, I think. Quite a severe rationalisation this year. I can't have any more shelf space. And all the time when I have my walk round in the morning, I'm thinking about where things can go to gain a bit of space. And where kit's going to go and things like that. So I'm always sort of thinking about things I could change to just gain a bit of space. These shelves in here do go back out in the grow room with the plants, so it's not like I've suddenly got to find new space for these. There will be space. They won't necessarily stay in that space, but yeah, so I usually sort of stand here for a minute and just have a look round. And you know, some times of year there's masses of blooms everywhere, other times of year not so much. You know, I mean, we're coming into blooming season, certainly for the resting type dendrobiums, and growing season for everything. So things are moving now. Just got to keep up with them, basically. But yeah, I usually just sort of have a quick look round, and I always start with this one. This is Hancockii, and I start with this one because it's a new plant. It's never bloomed for me before, so I like to see how the buds are coming on and try and imagine how much longer I've got to wait before we see these marvellous waxy yellow dendrobium blooms. But there's quite a lot of shoots coming out on this plant, and now that I've seen what the shoots develop like, quite a lot of them are going to be buds. Like this little one here. I thought that might be a branch, but it's obviously going to be a couple of buds, and they're in their infant stage. And there's lots more little green tips poking out in places, so I think we're going to have some blooms on that. A quick look at the Vandas. I've got trouble with the Vanda. That doesn't look happy at the moment. It's got quite a lot of marks on the leaves, and the other two are okay. And they're in the same place and they get treated the same. So I'm not quite sure what that one's up to. I'll have to have a think about that next time I get it down and have a look, which will probably be tomorrow. Have a quick scan round the top shelf. Sherry baby's going over. The other spike behind it's coming on. There's a nice, what's that thing called? Hamiltonaria spike coming up there in front of the blue bit. So that's coming on. Twinkle's going over. The Nellie Isla red velvet's still hanging in there, but I don't think that's going to be with us too much longer. It's dropped 2 blooms. Those were the first 2 that came out, and these seem to be hanging on. The last spike on the epidendrum hybrid is now opening, and the Wessex Orchid Society show has been rearranged. It's now the Saturday the 24th of March. So you know, I'm starting to think about what I'll have that can go to that show. But I won't be taking much. It's quite a long trip, and I've got other things to do at that show. Quick scan round here. These all got watered yesterday, the cooler growers that are not supposed to dry out, excuse me. But that's as far as I got yesterday, so I'll start watering here today, thinking about that sort of thing. Thinking about that Dendrobium prima donna nobile type, and the fact that it's totally wasted down there and it needs putting somewhere where I can see it. But with the size of the plant, that's not easy. Hello, Fluffy. You come to help? Hey, you come to help. You know, Fluffy Cat's getting disturbed. He likes to sort of sleep out in the hallway and sort of on the stairs, that sort of place, but with the workmen and the noise that they create, he disturbs and gets fretful quite easily. And he's got a strange mindset. His mindset is that wherever he is, when he hears something he doesn't like rain on the roof out here, he runs away from it. So today, he's probably going to go off out in a minute, and he'll come back later today when it quietens down. Well, wherever he goes, he probably doesn't go that far, so he can still hear that noise, but he frets where he is when he first hears it, if you see what I mean. Because if it rains on this roof and it frightens him and he runs outside, well, it's still raining, isn't it? Wherever he goes, it's still raining, but he seems to need to get away from where he first hears the noise. That Maxillaria bloom's gone over. The next one was about 5 days behind it, so that one will go soon. Quite a few rescues in this area, and I'll have a closer look as I go round. Yeah, Cymbidium still in bloom, although this colour seems to be changing. And if it's changing, it's a sign of possible fading on the blooms. You never know. That Cattleya, its sister plant up the back there, those buds are going to open probably in the next day or two. They don't last a very long time, so they'll both be out together for a while. This orange one's still doing well. This other orange Cattleya here, the blooms are starting to go. It's dropped 2. There's another one just going. So although that got a first at the last show it went to, it'll have dropped all its blooms by the time the next show comes along. These are lasting well. Well pleased with that. First time bloomer. Coleogyne cristata. Just thinking about where I've got space and where some things can go. Limited by size. Tall plants can only go in certain places. Otherwise the leaves are all bent up against the shelf above. So I am sort of limited. Holy clay pots got watered yesterday. Forget about them. Very interested in Victoria Reginae buds. Getting their colour now. Up the back there. Dying to see that come out in bloom for the first time. Been waiting ages for that to bloom. Most of the new plants are up here, plus some of my sort of smaller kikis and things like that. Now these can start being dotted around in other places because none of them are tall. So I can find other places for them, and that might mean I can get that giant prima donna up on here and take pride of place while it's in bloom. Nothing much going down on down here. I've had to move my pinguiculas. They were all dotted around over here. Well, until I get that shade netting up, that's too much sun straight on them. So I've moved them away to get a bit of shade. They're all coming on quite nicely. I mean, this one's pushing out a load of rosettes. These are the 3 new ones I got towards the end of last year. That one has bloomed. One of the others has bloomed, I forget which one, but as a plant this one seems to be bursting into life now. The other 3 I've got, this one's putting up lots of new rosettes. This has just finished a couple of blooms, and that one and these 2 are the same. They all came from Oliver. That one's just opening, that's nice. Quick look round the bottom shelves, nothing much going on there really. The Zygo new growths are coming on this one. That's the Louisendorf. This growth is pushing on at quite a rate of knots now. There's no reason why that growth shouldn't produce a spike. Probably quite soon. So I'm looking forward to that again. Up on the mounts we got all the Tolumnias, and Hairy Monster lives up here as well. Most of the Tolumnias are up here. There's a nice spike pushing on one of them. But that's the only one with a new spike at the moment. But apart from this one up here, which is still struggling, but its new growth is starting to move, so I think it might make it. The others have now got roots. They've recovered from the scale attack. They're okay. This one we looked at yesterday, so they're doing okay. Air plants, I've got one in bloom up there. They need some water. I must do those today. And once I put my water in my bowl, it's pure RO water. They really don't need much feed at all. They just need a dunk in the water every now and again. So try and remember to do those today. Give them a drink. And then just have a quick look up here. Oh, somebody asked if I could show the Nocturnum. There's nothing much going on with it apart from this enormous cane that it's pushed up, which is quite a bit larger than the previous one. The spike that it produced and the very attractive bloom that promptly self-pollinated and collapsed on the second day. Didn't even get to take a picture. Yeah, this new cane getting a bit purple in places, and I had to think last time I watered this, well, you shouldn't be. So the chances are that's getting too much light, so it's now got its back to the light. That's my trick. Yeah, light comes in from there, so by putting it this side, it's got its back to the light, so it doesn't get quite such intense light. Harvey Amnum third bloom's opened on that little spike. That's nice. My Hibikii doesn't seem to be taking off as well as I was hoping, but nonetheless it's a strong plant, and there's no signs of any new growth at the base yet, and no signs of any blooms. My Miltonia pear, recovering from the dreaded F, they seem to be coming on quite nicely. Yeah, that's my sort of quick look along here. The moniliform, Dendrobium moniliform, has got 2 buds that will be opening soon. Pretty white blooms. The Arengus blooms are open now. Attractive little plant. Yeah. Emphasis on the little, that is a genuine miniature. I keep looking at this Dendrobium fleckeri with just one eye. most orchid names with eye on the end have got a pair, you know. So, but it's fleckeri with a single eye. This is the latest growth, and it has a sheath. This is the previous growth, and it has a sheath. But neither of them look like they're going to bloom yet. It has bloomed before. I'm not sort of thinking about that. No signs of any new growths on the Cattleya cernua. It's not strictly speaking a growing season for that yet. This seems to have quite a good growth pattern. It grows in the growing season and then blooms on those new growths. That was quite a show when that was coming on. The weird one, new growth is coming on that, pushing on. That's a Rodriguesiae. That little Arengus is pushing some new leaves out in places. This bulbophyllum, as usual, what looked like might be a spike has turned into a new growth. It just does that. That's yet to bloom. In fact, most of my bulbophyllums have yet to bloom. Elizabeth Ann Bucklebury has, and one other. None of the others. Anyway, that's just a sort of quick look round that I do each day before I touch anything. Just have a quick look round. And that look round is good enough, because I've been doing it long enough, I suppose, to spot buds at a distance. Some of those would be missed and they'll get spotted on a closer inspection. But it's just a quick look round. I always precede it by having a look at the notes to see when things were last watered and what they were watered with, and then in my mind I'm sort of thinking what workload I have for this coming day as it sort of just gets going. So yeah, just a quick walk round, the sort of look and see and plan and think. And some days I walk out here and do this and turn around and walk out again and do absolutely nothing. But those days are getting quite thin on the ground now as we head into the growing season proper. And if that sun's going to stay out, one task that absolutely must be done today is get that shade netting up. Now I still might err on the side of caution and put it up temporarily and just put a couple of screws in and let it drape. But it can't stay like that on a permanent basis because we do get wind and it'll end up in next door's garden or up the road somewhere if it's only loosely attached. And what I normally do is I've got battens the full length of the vertical beams, and basically the shade netting is strapped on every single batten with multiple screws holding it really firm, but it's held away from the glass. It forms a nice air gap in there that stops a fair old bit of the heat coming through. And obviously it's going to, you know, this sun's getting quite strong now in the sky late in the afternoon, so it'll just provide that light burn protection. So yeah, that's my only chore I've got to do today. And the reason it's a chore is because all that stuff got thrown in the shed at the end of last year, and there's a hole in the roof and it gets wet in there, and it's I just don't like going in the shed. There's things in there with 8 legs that are growing to quite enormous sizes, and me and them just don't get on. So I shall be in there and out like a shot and get that shade netting up later today. And yep, and think about the watering and feeding that they're going to get today, get that set up, get the kettle on, more coffee, and just gradually get going as the day sort of gets going, and I get going with it, and we'll see how we get on. But yeah, it's a nice place to be first thing in the morning. Oh, and I'll add this little snippet of information on the end, reluctantly. That's the polite version. We've had an update from YouTube about monetization, and yet again apologising for the backlog, and they're now hoping to clear it by the end of April, which to me just says they really don't give a monkeys about up and coming channels, new channels. They just don't give a monkeys, do they? If they did, they'd put resources into it, spend a bit of their absolute fortune and get it sorted. So, you know, all those people waiting, you got a long wait, and that includes me. It is a trifle annoying, to say the least, but there's nothing anybody can do about it. And at the end of April we may get another notice saying, well, sorry about the backlog, but it's going to be July. And then what? And it just goes on and on and on. If I was in charge of that, I'd expect to get the sack and be looking for employment elsewhere. And yet it just goes on.